Good evening and welcome to the Car Sim and Race Driver Show with me, Gt3, and a very, very special guest. It is Matt Fox. Good to see you, Matt. How are you doing tonight?
Good evening, Hugh. I'm doing really well. Thank you for inviting me. This is lovely.
You're very welcome. You were recommended by John Potter. He said you have to get Matt Fox on the show. So we did that as soon as we could. That's the thing. Now, we always have good fun on the show and lots of questions. Now, I know you've got a big history of racing games and all sorts of things. So I'm looking forward to getting into all of that. So for everyone who's watching, feel free to ask comment. You can ask a question in the comments. Just make sure I'll put the comments on there that you've got that you put it in capital letters, and that means I can see it a lot easier. Now, I've also got the description, the YouTube link for Matt's channel in the description there. So if you want to subscribe to his channel and see great sim racing content, then it's on there as well. That'd be fantastic. But Matt, I always start with this question: how did your kind of sim racing and kind of racing game when your like of racing games begin?
Well, this is this could easily take up a whole hour. I'll get my notes. Right. So if we talk about sim racing, then in its literal sense of simulated racing, because I'm of a certain age, I started with Scale X-Trick. So we're talking pre-video games, because at the time it would have been like early 80s, and you still had F1 with Murray Walker on BBC One every other Sunday, and Argos would have the F1 with the Williams of people like Keke Rosberg and stuff like that. And there'd always be a Ferrari, even though they'd never won anything for 20 years, but there'd always be a Ferrari car. And one Christmas I was really lucky because my parents got me a Scale X-Trick, and my uncle hadn't sort of discussed what to get me with them, and he got me one as well. So I ended up with 2 Scale X-Tricks, so a lot of track, and I could make these huge tracks that went the whole way around the lounge. And after, but I didn't really have anybody to play with because my brother and sister are much older than me and had left home. So I had to become an expert at having a gun in both hands. Wow! And Montreal has the Wall of Champions, where you have that white stretch of concrete with the tire marks on. I had the skirting board of champions, where the cars would just fly off and ding into the wall. But so we had Scale X-Trick. So that was the starting point. And actually, when I was thinking about this, it occurred to me that actually all of my memories and all of my leaps forward in sim racing are all reliant on controller inputs. So when you get a new type of controller or a step up in controller, that tends to resonate. So we start when I got my I said before the Atari, I had the Binatone TV system, but there was no racing on that. There was a black and white and color button, but there was no racing on it. So my first racing would have been on games would have been Indy 500 on the Atari 2600, and that came with controllers. It came with 2 paddles, unlike the normal paddles, which went a little bit and then stopped. The Indy 500 ones just spun and spun and spun, and this blows your mind as like a 10-year-old. You think it just doesn't stop; it's going on forever. So Indy 500, and then there was other games after that on the Atari 2600, like obviously Pole Position and Enduro and Night Driver, etc. But then the sort of the video game crash happened. So the video game in the home went a bit quiet, and most of the time then I would be getting driving experience from the arcade. And if I sort of fast forward to 1986, certainly the biggest influence to get me interested in driving games was Outrun. Specifically the sit-down hydraulic cabinets. Wow. So Sega really were the masters at both hydraulic cabinets and sprite scaling, and the speed. Sitting in one of these, going through one of the stages where the columns are zooming overhead, and you're like, it's just so quick, your brain can't comprehend it. So we had Outrun, and then obviously we had Elite, and that obviously even the stand-up cabinet had a very primitive force feedback. If you went off the track, you got to dig through the wheel, so you really felt the immersion in such a simple game. But then we jumped forward to other arcade games, because then we went to the really next generation, as it was then, of graphics. We went from bitmaps to textured polygons. So we had Daytona and Ridge Racer, and we had Sega Rally, Manx TT. If you had the deluxe original cabinet in your arcade, which was a really heavyweight bike where the handlebars went the opposite way to the way you leant, not the plastic one which just leans over, it was proper articulated, and it was phenomenal. So we moved on to that arcade, and then we had that spell in consoles where you finally got some sort of arcade quality with the Saturn and the PlayStation 1. And again, the Saturn, even though the conversions were okay, what was noticeable about the Saturn is they had a wheel. You could buy a wheel. It was like a long elongated shape, as opposed to a round shape. But the thing about the wheel was it had a very big base, and you could angle it and extend it. But because it had a big base, you could actually sit on it. You could put it in between your legs and anchor it in your seat and drive. That made them so much more, again, immersive. There was no pedals. You had the accelerator buttons. So we went through that. And then on the PlayStation side, now I was very lucky because I've always had a job that pays well. And I had a friend at the time who had a computer store, a video game store, and he did imports. So I actually had an import Japanese Saturn and an import Japanese PlayStation about 6 months before they were released here. So I had these games. I mean, it was a bit of a nightmare with the menus and stuff, but I was playing Ridge Racer well in advance, and it always makes me smile because there's so many people who've been on who've said, "Oh yes, the PlayStation 1 was where I started with Gran Turismo," and I'm laughing, thinking, "Oh mate, Gran Turismo is one of the last games on the PlayStation. You know, you there's so much before that. Ridge Racer Revolution, Rage Racer, Ridge Racer 4, all the Ridge Racer series was the place to go racing." But on the just nipping back to the arcade, I actually was lucky enough to have a go. I don't know if you ever saw it. Namco did a full-size Ridge Racer cabinet, which was a proper Mazda MX-5 car with a big curved projection screen, which was about 40 feet. I mean, it was about £5 a credit, but it was like, take all my money, because you were sitting in a proper car driving Ridge Racer. So that was really good, because I worked in central London, and Trocadero had all the best arcade games.
Oh, I remember the Trocadero.
Superb. So from there, from Ridge Racer and that, then we went to Gran Turismo and the DualShock controller. So it was the first time we had analog controllers, and they were dual sticks. And then after that, we had there was a deluge on the PlayStation. The F1 game started, Toka. Then you had obviously Gran Turismo 2. Then we went a bit of a lull. We jumped forward now to the PlayStation 3, which is where we had the next big jump. I was playing, this would have been 2009. I was playing the latest Formula One game, but the problem I was having was on one of the last corners of Monaco, very tight right-hander. When you come out the swimming pool section, it's the right-hander before the pits. And on a controller, I would just always spin. And no matter what I would do, I'd always spin. I was just too much, the minuscule, minuscule movements needed to not spin were phenomenal. And I sat and thought, I wonder if there's any steering wheels. So I went online and I got the Logitech GT driving force. And I just had my first son at the time, and he had this big wooden high chair, and it was great. It was the perfect height for me to sit on the arm of the sofa, and it had like a good sturdy base, so I could put the pedals in the base, clamp the wheel to the tray, and so I had this high chair with the wheel, and I was playing Formula One, and I didn't spin ever again after that. So that solved that. So that was the next big movement. And then we jumped forward again to, this is a bit more modern day now, where the PlayStation 4. So I was on the PlayStation 4 and again with Gran Turismo, and I thought this is interesting because there's a lot of multiplayer online. And I had my first taste of multiplayer online in any sort of volume on the Xbox 360 with the Project Gotham series. And so I went and thought, yes, let's have a look at this online racing with the PlayStation 4, because it is exciting when you get other people to race and not the AI.
Yeah.
But again, the controller I thought just wasn't accurate enough to give the other drivers the respect that they deserve and you not crash into them. So that's when I went for the Logitech G29. So again, new controller, new experiences, much more fun. And then I was quite enjoying it, and I was looking through YouTube because YouTube was now really hitting its stride. So this was 2017. And I came across a community. I came across a channel called Game Tech UK.
Jason,
yeah. So since I joined that community, I've become very good friends with Jason. We're really similar people. We're only born 6 weeks apart, and we've basically grown up liking the same things and having the same toys and having the same influences. So it's quite funny. But we also look kind of the same. If you ever meet him, is when we're sort of face to face, it's very sort of uncanny. But so I started driving, and he was a bit ahead of the curve because he would do community Gran Turismo racing on a Thursday. He'd have a few races in the morning, and then he'd have like 3 or 4 hours in the evening. And the morning wasn't very well populated because people were at work, but I used to work shifts, so it wasn't a problem. And in the evening, it was a real bun fight to try and get into the server. And it was a superbly clean community. I remember one race where we had a full grid at the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, and everybody got through turn one without even sniffing a touch. And then, it was a superb race. So did some racing like that. And we dabbled a bit in Project Cars 2 as well. And then I thought, on YouTube, I'm seeing a lot of things for PC racing. And the games on PC, everybody says are a lot more realistic. And the main place I heard that was on another Discord of another streamer, because I went into it as a Gran Turismo player, and I got eaten alive. Basically, they're saying, "Gran Turismo, get out of here! Cars don't handle." And I'm sitting there thinking, well, how bad can it be? How different can a PC racing game be? So, and I also had PlayStation VR at the time, and I'd seen that you could get the PlayStation VR with a bit of a hack with a program called Trinus VR. You could get it working on the PC. So I thought, that's handy, because I'd like to do some VR racing. So I got myself a PC, but I couldn't get it to work. So I then just went and got an Oculus anyway. But then I started playing Project Cars 2 in VR, Assetto Corsa in VR, had a look at rFactor 2 in VR, and it was just astonishing. I thought, my God, this is so hard. They weren't wrong. This is so hard. Assetto Corsa, this car, I just don't know how to get this car to go fast or stop fast. And then you really sort of wake up to it. And then it took me, I did a bit of research, because Assetto Corsa is good, but it had no real multiplayer. Project Cars 2 was good, but the multiplayer was really indifferent. rFactor 2, forget it. So I thought the online multiplayer on PC, everybody seems to be going to iRacing. I did my research, did about 2 months of research, and thought, no, I'm going to give this a go. And I've never looked back, and that was like nearly 4 years ago. And it is, it's so you got all these massive jumps in either technology of the game or the controller. I think the controller does make a massive difference to how you enjoy the race. But there it is. So that was 41 years in 14 minutes.
Wow.
So
that's pretty.
Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you again next week for part 2.
No, that's fantastic, because from the word go, when you said you had a Ski Electrics and you and all that stuff, and it was amazing because the proper Ski Electrics were really, really good. Yeah. And I remember I would have been about maybe 9 or 10, and after asking my father my parents for some kind of form of Ski Electrics, they got me one, but it wasn't Ski Electrics. It was like a battery thing. It was a knockoff, and it lasted about half an hour, and then the batteries were dead, and then that was it. And then half the cars didn't work, or they would, the brushes underneath were a bit ropey.
I say you never forget the smell of a burning Ski Electric car, because you always used to hold it down and see if you could make them catch fire. If you had a dusty enough motor at the back, you could get some flames.
Goodness,
and with the 70s and 80s polyester carpets, that probably wasn't the best idea.
But no, that was the thing. But I do remember things like Ridge Racer, because I always remember when you hit the thing, it said time extension as you'd carry on. But it's true, the arcades were the best places to go to get these. And I remember going to the Trocadero, not so much for racing games, but for some of the other stuff. And my brother used to live in London, so he'd take me there. We'd have a great time. But it's amazing because I remember I had an Acorn A3000 and BBC B computers. That's because my mum was a teacher, so we always used to go that side. We'd always get the crappy BBC things.
Some kid at school has got no computer. Where is it? I think Mrs. Hattrick's taking it home again. Yeah, and it's a huge big thing. But we had 64K on one of them. But it was that, and a tape player. And my brother would pirate all the tapes from his mates, and they'd get about 15 minutes in, and then it would break, it'd be error at line 940 or something. But it was shocking. Back to the magazine.
Yeah, that was it. I know, because it was like, the thing is, when it was a big breakthrough getting a actual disc to put in there, and your games actually worked half the time. But there was a great game called Saloon Cars for the A3000, and it had you could qualify, and you had different types of racing in it. But you had had a budget, so the more you won, the more money you'd make, and then you could afford a better crew. But when you start out, you have to get like the Bill Busted mechanic, and that literally was his name. And you had dodgy tires, you had fatal slip tires on it, on a Vauxhall Astra GTE. I could do really good qualifying, but after about 3 laps, the tires were gone, and that was it. And if you hit the wall, it just kind of went bop. And then they said, "You are dead, game over." That was the thing. So no, it was hilarious. But that's what gets you in to these kind of games, isn't it? And then eventually with PlayStation, like with Gran Turismo, also the F1 games, I used to love. I didn't really play F1 till PS4 kind of came out. I was on PS4, PS1 and PS2. So when you started to get the games for that, and I really enjoyed them. But no, it's amazing to see. So now you're on the iRacing. Kind of championships, things like that. What is the key to making iRacing work? Because obviously you've been on it for 4 years. What have you found the best ways to improve your performance on it?
Well, it's not unique to iRacing. It really isn't unique to iRacing at all. But unfortunately, it's not something that most sim racers want to hear. And it's very simple. It's just practice. But it's how you practice. I mean, when I first started iRacing, I wanted to drive every car on every track in every series. And that was fun. It was interesting, especially the oval stuff. If you've never driven ovals, oval racing is, because people watch it, especially us Brits, we watch it and say, but it's just turning left. It's not very interesting. But if you're in a NASCAR traveling at 200 miles an hour around Daytona, in VR as well, and you've got a car to your right and then a wall and another car to your left and another car to that left. So you're 4 wide and you're doing 200 miles an hour. You have to remind yourself to breathe. It is so exciting. You can't do anything wrong. But the thing was, as I was spreading myself so thin, I was having a lot of fun, but I wasn't making any progress. And then, so I was doing like 4 or 5 different types of series. And I was also doing about 20 odd races a week. I mean, some people online on streaming on Twitch, they'll do 20 races in 2 days, but I was doing 20 races a week, and it was just a case of my racing. It was just too much, and it was the wrong type. So about 18 months ago, I thought to myself, right, I can't keep swapping from this car to this car, going from a Skip Barber single seater, going to a GTE car, then maybe an LMP car, then back down to another car. I thought I need to concentrate on what I really enjoy, and I'm going to put more time into practice than I do racing, and let's see if it has any effect. And what I found was, even though I don't stick to the same car all the time, I tend to race just GT3 or GTE. They're both very similar cars to drive, and you get the same sort of drivers, same mentality. So you've got a nice sort of standard baseline to work with. But when I started practicing more than I raced, so if I was doing a 40-minute race, I'd practice on the track for about 2 hours. I'd work on getting the fastest line, I'd work on alternate lines, I'd work on defensive lines, and I'd work on sort of seeing which parts of the track were easiest to overtake or where mistakes were likely to be made. So when I was using VRS, Virtual Racing Schools service on on how they show how to go on hot lapping and track guides. Their track guides are so detailed. I was watching one which was for a GTE race at Silverstone, and the lap in the Porsche was going to take about 1 minute 45. The video guide for the lap took 32 minutes. It was just so detailed about what the driver was looking for in this corner, reference points, where the car was going to drift out to, what gear you could get away with, what gear was pushing it. And when I started doing that and looking at the more theory side of it, because iRacing prides itself on being a full sim and it's high realism, then I started getting progress. And I, about 4 or 5 months after going for this strategy, I won my first GT3 race. And at the time, I would never have imagined that I would ever win a GT3 race. So some people who win them every time they drive, they just have a knack. But because I mentioned in the conversations we had before today that sim racing sort of helped me learn to drive. All of the arcade games meant that when my dad threw me in a car and said, right, we're going to drive 7 miles home from the shops, go for it. The only thing he said didn't need any work at all was my steering and sort of speed around corners. And I sat there and thought, oh, that'll be outrun and that'll be pole position doing that. But the downside is, having had a full license and a full clean safe license for over 30 years, is that when I'm heading into a corner and there's a bit of trouble, my brain instantly pulls me back to see, well, how's it going to develop? And a car will nip around me, suddenly there'll be a big opening and he'll sail through the middle, and I sit there like, oh, typical. So it makes me a bit more cautious. You find younger drivers are less careful, that they're fearless, because to them it's still mostly a game. To me, it is mostly about driving, so I treat it a bit more respectfully. But since practice more than race, I've had much better results and I'm much more consistent. That's really good. Yeah, but a lot of people don't want to practice. It's too boring, or they do the wrong practice. They just try and hot lap. It's not about hot lapping. It's about it's about learning the track and getting to know the track, because every track has a personality. So if you can learn, it's like a person. If you can learn about their personality and learn what their good points are and the bad points are, and again with the car as well, you got to. It feels like I've got to be at one with the car. You don't have to be at one with the car, but you at least have to know, does your car like to oversteer? You've got understeer at a certain speed. And once you've got all of those, you hook them all together, you do much better. Yeah. I just started iRacing quite recently. And I remember the first time I tried it, I didn't know any of the tracks at all. So that was the thing, trying to get through it, then trying to get it all to work and get it all set up. But once I got that, then I went out in a Formula V, and which I do really like, and it's quite funny. It's great fun. And it was kind of weird getting used to the way that the car will oversteer. If you just go too fast into a bend, you think, oh, I've got enough grip, and then all of a sudden it snaps away. But I got disqualified from the first race. I was that somebody hit me. And in the second race, I actually avoided people, and then they were spinning off all over the place. And then I touched someone as I was trying to avoid them, and I locked wheels, and I went flying up into the air and landed in the trees. I went right away along. It was one of these funny tracks as trees all kind of round about it. It's not Oran Park. It's some funny place. It was one of the ones I did about a month ago. And I thought, well, that's my second race done and dusted. So my mind is, you start off at like 2.50. And I was down to like 2.37 and like going down and down. And I thought, God, this is terrible. So I had to kind of go back to the drawing board and try and improve my laps. And eventually I won a race. And now I have to say, I really like it. I like that. The Mazda MX-5s are good fun. I also did a Dallara race. And that was crazy because I started 18th and I finished 3rd. Only because it was like cars were flying all over the place. So, but if you consistency will get you further than outright speed. Like in most, real life things, if you don't have to be the quickest, but if you can be quick enough and just nail it out robot-like lap after lap after lap, you will get more of a return than if you just take each lap as it comes and you're crazy and you're trying to always like getting a qualifying time. You're going to come unstuck sooner or later. It's like playing Russian roulette. So you need to just be patient, play the long game. Even with a short 20-minute sprint, You want to make it to 20 minutes. You know, that old rubbishy saying about to finish first you must finish. Just drive within what you can. There's no need to push to all the time. You just measure it, because in games like this, people will do the overtaking for you. They'll overtake themselves, and then you gain the place. So it's, you know, again, practice.
Just putting the pressure
know
on,
what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's what I found, that if you can follow people and think, I'm not going to be doing just a bit faster than them, but if you keep the pressure on, they're more likely to make a mistake.
Just study what they're doing. You get to know the track, get to know your car, get to know the car in front of you. You'll only take a lap. You'll see where they're braking, and then because you know the track better than they do, you know your car better than they do, you can now start to get some sort of strategy. Am I going to take them? Am I going to do it on the track? Am I going to do it in the pits? Have we got traffic coming up? Are they going to come out into traffic? Are they going to cope with it? Is there a car in front which is blinking? Should I pit now so that he deals with the blinking car? When I come out, I don't. Little things like that, and it's just all this other theory that helps you. It's you know, you see Formula One drivers all the time when they're not in a car. They've got their face on a screen or on a spreadsheet, and they're looking at data, and it's all the theory, and that is what gets you. That's what gets you good results ultimately. Yeah.
I remember even watching Senna and Mansell when they would put the monitors in front, and they'd do paperwork, and they'd be looking at that in the driver briefings and things like that. It was always good. But and it's that's the way that they used to do it, which is fantastic. Now I'll get to some of the questions, because I know we've been
we have questions,
and we've got questions. Yes, we do indeed.
Good grief.
The first one is from Ginobili. It says, Matt, do you think Gran Turismo 7 is going to live up to the hype?
Well, the hype. You have to ask yourself, really, who's hyping it? There's the biggest. I've got a friend who's a teacher, and she says teaching would be great if it wasn't for the students. And the same thing can be said with sim racing. Sim racing would be great if it wasn't for the sim racers, because all sim racers are just notoriously hard to please. Whether you are operating on Gran Turismo, or whether you are operating with a expensive PC on iRacing or Assetto Corsa Competizione or anything, we're just never happy. Gran Turismo, it looks amazing, yes, but the physics are rubbish and the sound's bad. Oh, look at iRacing, it does this realistically, yes, but it's expensive. And look at Assetto Corsa, it's so pretty, yes, but when the cars bump into each other, you're doomed. There's never anyone who says, do you know what, I was pretty happy with the all-round experience there. So will it live up to the hype? To be honest, the hype is only what you're making for yourself. Is it going to live up to your hype? I'm sort of coming across here as a bit of a Dr. Phil. I don't want to be. But the thing is, if you set the bar way too high, it's never going to reach it. Now, the interesting thing with Gran Turismo 7 is the first time ever Polyphony, who are notoriously bad at getting games out quickly and on time. I keep maintaining, because there's this release date of March next year. I keep maintaining at the moment that the game is finished, but they've still got, they've allowed themselves 6 months to work on the reflections in the hubcaps on the Fiat 500, because it's just not quite right. But how's your bond? The thing is, because it's coming out on PlayStation 5 and 4, the PlayStation 5 version is going to be hamstrung by the PlayStation 4 version, because it's cross-generation play. It's only going to be as powerful as the PlayStation 4 version, with much better graphics, much higher frame rate, native resolution. So, and we've already seen this, as Key mentioned last week, with the lower lobbies online. They're lower than they are already, and that's because the technology to get these cross-generation machines working requires computing power. So will it live up to the hype? Well, it depends what your hype is. We're also hitting a sort of plateau, because graphically in games, when you look at the Unreal 4 engine and the upcoming Unreal 5 engine, and what Polyphony do with aging consoles like the PlayStation 4, the graphics look so good. They're almost photorealistic. You think about how the replays on Gran Turismo 1 looked, and we looked at that and thought it was like watching Eurosport. It was that good. And now you look at it and think, but now the graphics are so good, we've sort of hit a plateau. You can't get better than photorealistic or photogrammetry. So you really got to say to yourself, what's the other areas we can improve? Gran Turismo needs to improve its sound, because as it's a Japanese game, and the sort of culture with Japanese car games is it's the looks and the collecting of the cars and the special editions, and that is the priority. The look is the priority. The number of cars is the priority, and that's taking away resources from other stuff. So they really need to improve the sound a bit, and the online experience needs to be a little bit better. The penalty system is iffy. I haven't played Gran Turismo in a while, but every 2 or 3 months I'll see a video from Basic Ollie or Aries, Rory, or the Key, and they'll all be saying, or Devon, and they'll all be saying, oh, the penalty system is broken again. I'm never going to go back until they do the next video the next month. So will it live up to the hype? If it doesn't live up to the hype, it just hasn't lived up to your hype. That's the same with all the games. I anticipate, because Polyphony have a very good track record, no pun intended. They have a very good track record with driving games. They kind of know their audience. So I'm sure that if you like Gran Turismo Sport, you will love Gran Turismo 7. I won't be playing it, Gran Turismo, even though I was playing Gran Turismo quite a lot when it first came out, which sort of springboarded me into PC racing. I won't be playing it because it's one of the hardest things about racing on PC, I find, is once you sort of, again, would you buy a car without power steering, without electric windows, unless it was a Ferrari F40? Would you buy one without air conditioning? Would you buy one without central locking? You probably wouldn't, because once you've had them, it's very hard to go back to that. So racing the stuff like iRacing and I said, of course, Competizione and rFactor 2 and all the other stuff, when you go back to Gran Turismo, you want it to do something and it doesn't do quite what you want, and then you sort of lose interest quickly. So I probably won't be going on to Gran Turismo 7. I don't have a PS5, I have a PS4, but it's not really a game that interests me. But it is an interesting game. A lot of people love it. It's very popular, and so fair play to that. It targets itself, and what it does very well. But yeah, the hype is only really what sim racers make for it. So ultimately, 20 minutes later, the answer to your question is no, it's not going to live up to the hype. It never will, because people are never going to be happy with what it could give. It could be delivered with a free shrink-wrapped Ferrari, and you'd go, no, I wanted a blue one. So people are never going to be happy, but it will be a phenomenal. It has to be, really, for the PlayStation 5 to really succeed. It has to be a phenomenal game.
It's one of the big titles, really, for PS5, isn't it? That's the thing.
They're tapping into the history a lot. If you look at the trailers with Gran Turismo 2, they seem to have remastered Gran Turismo 2, and Gran Turismo 2 is massively popular. So I think they're sort of tapping into a bit like the nostalgia of the earlier games and bringing them up, because people love the earlier games. So it's going to do massively well. I don't think Polyphony's owners are going to be on the streets of Japan begging for money in the next 12 months.
No. But it does look rather good. Now I've got some questions that John Votter said
never heard of him.
On. So that's the thing, and he said you must ask these questions.
Oh, bless him.
And it is about here we are. Question from Matt Fox. Why does Project Cars 2, your favorite sim, deliver a superior sim racing experience over every other sim on the market today?
It's funny. Yes, we have a private joke, because the other day John tweeted that he said, "Oh, I want to race at Daytona." So John races predominantly on Assetto Corsa Competizione, which has 15 tracks. Gran Turismo actually only has 17 real-life tracks, so the track count is really low. But ACC has got even fewer. The problem with ACC is it's a licensed game, so if they don't race on it in real life, you can't race on it on the console. But he tweeted that he wanted to race at Daytona. A Daytona road course is a fantastic course; it really is good. And he said, "I'm going to get Project Cars 2." And so I replied to him and said, "No, don't get Project Cars 2. You get Assetto, get Automobilista 2."
Right, okay.
Because on the they've released a DLC, and it's got Daytona road course, and it's really good, and they've got GT and GT3 cars, which he loves, and they're really good, and the game is much better. It uses the same initial engine, so the same architecture, but the graphics are much better, the sound is much better, the feel is much better. And he went and bought Project Cars 2 anyway. I think it was on sale. He got it for like $10. So he bought it anyway, and he had lots of fun, which is good. But I keep ribbing him since then to say, Project Cars 2. You see, to me, again, what lets Project Cars 2 down, and there's always been this issue with the physics and the feel of how the car is a little bit disconnected from the road. But to me, the obvious thing is the sound, specifically the tyre screech. every car and every track, no matter what the combination of car and track, every tyre squeal sounds like a 1970s Ford Granada trying to make a getaway from a bank job in the Sweeney. It's just the same sample. And whether you're in a Fiat 500 or you're in a Porsche 962 Le Mans Longtail, the squeal is the same. And you think, oh man, it just drops the immersion. So I keep telling him to get rid of Project Cars 2, get Automobilists 2. Get with the kids these days, John. I mean, it's his birthday soon. Surely Mrs. John can get him a present.
That's the thing. Well, I remember it because I love Project Cars 1. That was one of my favourite games.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
For PS4, it would have been early PS4.
Yeah.
And I played into the midnight hours. I remember even after I was married, my wife would say, "Are you coming to bed, dear?" And I'm like this. Who
are you?
Screen,
what are you doing in my house?
And it was like the ruffle, saved for a few days. But the thing would have been, and I would go on to about 2 or 3 in the morning. And it was so good. And I actually got one of the fastest times. And I think it was the West Azure track. One of it was like the Azure.
So
it was like going down that road course. It took about 6 minutes or so. And it was and I got the fastest time in the world, and I think it's still there today. Because I just went over and over and over again. And then when I got my wheel, it helped me so much because I could get a lot more feel. But I love that game. And then I tried Project Cars 2, and I just couldn't make head or tail of it.
A bit harder, wasn't it?
It was. I couldn't keep any car on the road.
Same with me. Exactly the same with me. I thought, my God, what's happened here? It's so much harder. But with a bit of perseverance, it was okay. But yeah, they were excellent console racers because they just a little bit more simmy than Gran Turismo. You could do a lot more. And obviously the bigger range of tracks, real world tracks, and the online was pretty good. You could do it yourself, host a lobby yourself. It seemed to be pretty much the whole package. But for me, that Granada bank job tire squeal, it's just
no, that was the thing. But to be fair, I was in Glasgow recently on holiday. We were down at Ayr for a weekend. We went up into the Bray Head to the Escape or something, whatever it was. It was they had this big centre, and they had a sim racing bit there for different types of simulators, and they actually had a racing one, and only one of them worked as usual. You go in and there's two there, one's broken. There was no sound, but they gave me an extra shot because of that. But they gave me the VR, so I had to put the VR on, and it was at Knockhill in Formula Fords, and I thought, it's like great fun, and I actually won the race. And because it's kind of mad, but it was on a big screen, and having the VR, it's kind of amazing how it all kind of works. But they never seen anybody get around the track kind of facing forwards, let alone. And I had it on all the professional settings that they put it on because I wanted to do my gears and everything else. And it was really good fun actually. And I thought if the sound had been working, that would have been even better. But it does so that the way it's going, and that's quite an old game now. I mean, Project Cars 2 is ancient.
Does VR really well though. It's optimized so much better for VR than a set out course of competency only. And racing in VR is just it's a totally different game. When I first did VR and iRacing, so I did iRacing for about 2 months, and even though I had the VR, I didn't even bother trying it in VR. I couldn't get my head around how the cars moved in iRacing. It was so much harder. The learning curve is like that. And once I'd got used to it, I then tried it in VR, and it was a different game. For the first 2 minutes of the race, I'm literally just spending time looking at. I was in a skip barber, leaning out, looking at the brake assembly and the suspension, making it move. Wow. It's just phenomenal. And then and VR, the immersion is sound helps, but it's a totally different thing. You're not there. You're in your house, but you are at the track. You are in the car. You can't.
It makes your heart beat. It makes you actually think, my goodness, you're in the race. It reminds me of old track days that I did when I was like 18. I went to Donington Park when I was 18 to the Jim Russell Racing School, and we drove a Formula Vauxhall Lotus. And a few other cars, and I remember at the stint in the Vauxhall Lotus, that was the one we really were looking forward to because you were out on the I think they called it the Donington Loop at the back of the circuit, and we had to go around there, and that was the best bit of the whole thing. And it reminded me so much, even just in this Project Cars 2 VR simulator, of that kind of feeling. And I thought, God, this is bringing it all back, But it just shows you how good it was. So you kind of wonder what they're going to do next. But I've never tried it. How does it work on iRacing and a PC? To have VR, do you just have to buy a VR kind of goggles, or what does it work? just get a headset. I mean, the two most popular ones, it's all about budget. The most popular ones are the Oculus Rift S, which is about £250. You've got the Hewlett Packard
Reverb G2, which is about £600. But yeah, I mean, it's so good with VR. Again, you just plug it in, and iRacing goes, oh, VR, eh? You want to race in VR? Click yes or no. You click yes, and it just does it. It sorts out all the graphic settings for you, and it just takes you straight in.
So can you stream that then? Is it quite easy?
Oh, yeah.
It's all set up.
Oh, yeah. You don't need some games. You need to run a program which mirrors the display, but iRacing on your monitor. It still shows what you're looking at. So you this is technical for people at home. If you're running OBS or Streamlabs OBS, you just grab your screen as you would normally, and it will show exactly what you're seeing without the 3D effect. Because the big bonus you get with racing in VR is that the world is recreated in like a quasi 3D. So it enables you to know exactly where your wheels are, and it enables you to judge distances much better. You know exactly where the nose of your car is. And where the apex of the corner is, etc. So it's just an astonishing experience. It really is.
Yeah. I had issues with my OBS trying to get my screen because I was going to try and stream. To be fair, it got the stream, but it wouldn't project the sound for. I couldn't hear any sound, so I don't know what that's all about. So I'll need to try and fix that because I wanted to try and do my first ever race in iRacing, where I ended up getting disqualified. I thought, well, that lasted about 2 minutes. That was it. But no, I'll have to eventually maybe try the VR in iRacing because that does sound.
That's amazing. It is amazing.
Really good fun. Yeah. Now we've got a question here from Lee Kuzak.
Lee Kuzak. Oh, hello, Lee. I used to work with Lee. I used to be Lee's pimp. He made me a lot of money back in the early 90s. Yes.
I won't ask any questions. Then.
Best not to.
It was. What do you drive in real life?
I don't really, especially these days because of the lockdown. I mean, I work from home predominantly. Everything I need in my village is there. My car's just had its MOT, and in the last year I did less than 1,000 miles, and that's predominantly taking my kids to and from the tennis club on a Saturday morning, and then making a diversion through McDonald's on the way home. But my car is just a cheap jalopy. It's only like a 2005 Ford Focus. I don't really see the point in having a phenomenally, especially in this country, in having a phenomenally powerful car. I used to work up in London in Mayfair, and every day I'd be seeing Ferraris and Lamborghinis, Pagani Zondas, and they'd pull away and then have to stop for a traffic light or a speed hump or a junction or Nissan Micra. So I don't really drive anything fast in real life. I've driven some fast cars. I've been to Silverstone and driven their single seaters and the new Aston Martin Vantage V8, and that is phenomenal. Driven an Ariel Atom. Ariel Atom is the most amazing car I've ever driven. But for day to day, I mean, when you get kids, all those dreams of Porsche convertibles go out the window.
That's it.
And you have to get something you can shove everybody and the pets and enough furniture and clothes for a 3-week stay, even though you're just going for one night. So nice to see you anyway.
I always remember that there's a great Clarkson video that he was doing. This is the early 90s stuff, or mid 90s, and he said, when you have children, your sports car gets thrown in the river, and you have to go and buy a sensible estate. And he said, so what can you buy? And he had a BMW estate and something else. And it was a 5 Series and a Volvo 850 or something at the time. But no, that's the kind of thing that you get. I mean, it's funny because, and also the market is going nuts in the UK in the last 6 months. And I decided to take the plunge just a few days ago because people are saying that car prices have gone through the roof. And I thought, maybe we'll get ourselves something a bit more special or see if we can get a bit more for our car. Well, my Citroen Picasso, which is a few years old.
Had one of those.
Yeah, C4 Picasso on an 18
good.
Great car, but it went for $3,000 more than its trade price.
Wow.
So I thought, well, we need to do up the house because we've just moved recently and we want to kind of get it all sorted out. So we've just sold it yesterday, and we're trading down. We're heading for prudence, you could say, and we've got a Dacia Logan coming. I've had one before, and they're fantastic cars. It's a diesel. It does 70 to the gallon, and it's great for what I need for running around. And it's got a big boot, so that's kind of what we're getting. But we saved a fortune on it, so it kind of makes sense to do it. So it's the least sporty car of anyone thinks, what, you bought a Dacia?
You're going to have to change this now to the car sim and practical driver show.
I know, exactly. That's it, isn't it? But the thing is, it's based on old Renault Clios, and Renault Clios are actually really good to drive. And this is why I remember when, because we had like Hyundai i10s, we've had old Renault Clios. This drives better. I've got a Sandero already, and then I've just got this Logan's coming later on in the week, and it actually drives really well. I had a Hyundai i30 estate, and this thing outhandles it and performs it all day long. So it's and nobody expects you to overtake them. It's so funny. It's like BMW rage, because you overtake like a much better car, and they hate you. They absolutely hate you. And they try to overtake you back.
I've just remembered the last time Lee saw me drive a car. I had a Toyota Supra, so this was in the mid-90s. I had a G registered, not the ones that are used for drifting now, the one previously to that. And I'm probably sure I gave Lee a few lifts to football matches that we were playing in at the time in my Toyota Supra. So that's probably why I wonders if I'm still as flash as I was back then.
I do like my dream car. I think would be an Alfa Stelvio. I love the Alfa Romeo Stelvio. I got to drive one. I got to drive the Quadrifoglio earlier in the year, and I just loved that. But I'd have a Giulia Quadrifoglio. That would be a nice, because 4-wheel drive as well, so it's quite a good all rounder. But no, that's the thing. That
we've now hit the pipe and slippers segment of the show, folks.
Yeah. That's the thing. Now, Keith Will you. It's good to see you. Keith has asked a question, which says, what's your favourite add-on for iRacing? Things like Crew Chief, things like that.
Oh, okay. That's a really good question. Again, this is another thing with sim racing on PC versus sim racing on console. Consoles are closed, so you can't get anything for them. You might be lucky if you get like a Bluetooth program that works with it that you can have on a phone as a second display, but with PC the sky's the limit. You can have all sorts of stupid things that you don't really need, but the absolute, I think that the thing that everybody wants on iRacing, and it's really hard to get, is everybody wants a radar like you have on ACC. Now there are tutorials on YouTube that if you use SimHub you can actually make your own, but I haven't got the time for that. So Crew Chief is an absolute necessity. It's highly accurate. It works superbly, and you can customize it to everything. Because I obviously have a YouTube channel and I make videos, I have no idea why, by the way, but that's what I do. I also make sure I have a good overlay so that people watching can see the information on the screen that they need to know, such as who's around me, what's the overall positions in the race, and am I going to run out of fuel? If you're using Crew Chief and you're at Road America, am I going to run out of fuel? Is a very real possibility. For some reason, it always short fuels me. So I use Race Labs overlays, but apart from that, I don't really tend to use anything for iRacing. I've used a lot of things. I used IRFFB to try and increase the fidelity of the force feedback, but to be honest, a couple of the programs like VJoy, which it runs in tandem with, it sort of affected things like frame rate on my OBS recording, so I ditched that. So third-party stuff, really, I say Crew Chief is an essential, and it's free. So get that. Trading paints, obviously, if you want to have pretty-looking cars, trading paints is an essential. That's free. Race Labs, which has a free version, but I use the paid one. And I mentioned earlier VRS. If you're looking at doing open series where you can have open setups, there are a lot of free setups providers out there, but the people at VRS, they get their setups from the drivers at Coanda SimSport. When you look at Coanda SimSport and Team Redline, they're the two premier esports driving teams on the planet. They have the best drivers. Coanda have a house in Germany that they bought a house and keep all their racers in the house. So it's like a Big Brother situation, but they've got like a couple of rooms with all these state-of-the-art wall-to-wall rigs. And so I use their setups, and I find they work very well for me. There's others like Craig's Setup Shop and Pure Driving School. They're pretty good as well. Those are pretty much what I'd recommend for iRacing. But no third-party thing can substitute, again, just practice. One of the Coanda guys, he doesn't even use Crew Chief. He doesn't have his mirrors on. He doesn't have a spotter. He just drives blind, basically, and he's still got a world championship class license. So you don't need them. They're just nice to have. But Crew Chief has saved me. Looking at the apps, I think Crew Chief has saved me more than anything else.
Yeah. Well, I managed to get into D. I qualified my rookie thing after my first 2 disastrous races. I did a bit more practice and I went into MX5s and things like that, and some of the dirt cars as well. Well, it was kind of, there was an oval track. I think it was at Daytona or somewhere, and it was kind of like a kind of stock car type thing. Yeah. And you had to do a jump. Yeah, street stock. And that was quite fun. So I won a few races on that just by finishing, which was quite a laugh. Yeah. And then a few others, and I started to go up. And then the MX5s did quite well, and then a few Formula Vs did quite well. So now I'm D2 or whatever, 350 or something there.
So it's time for the Ferrari fixed and the Skip Barber if you're on D.
Yeah,
you can keep the Ferrari and go all the way to A class with that car. So because the series it runs, this is, I mean, we sort of we could do another hour on why iRacing isn't as expensive as people think it is. But ultimately, if you're thinking about progression, the easiest way to do it is to get especially as it's brand new, they've released a new version, the Ferrari 488 GT3, and then get a Skip Barber. Skip Barber is the best racing on iRacing, but the car is quite flimsy. But obviously, the Ferrari will get you through to the higher licenses in the GT races, the longer sprints, the endurances, all the team stuff with multi-class and driver change, all use the Ferrari. So D-class Ferrari and Skip Barber, I'd say have a look at next.
And are the Skip Barber, because I've only done a little practice run on that, are they are they base settings or something, or fixed settings?
It's a fixed setup. Yeah, they're fixed setup races, but they're just they're just like a more enhanced Formula V. They have road tires, not slicks, so that you can really slide them around. Once you get the feel of it, sliding around corners like the old Formula Ford and Formula Vauxhall.
Because it was quite ready. You had to really hold the slide as you went through the corners and stuff.
It's the most raced series on iRacing because it's just so close all the way around. And you get you see things you don't really see in other classes. You get drivers working together. So you get one really fast driver goes off and he'll get a big gap. And then the pack behind him, it's like the peloton in the Tour de France. The lead car will create a draft to get everybody else quick. Then they'll slingshot and then they'll start to close the gap. I've seen a driver close a 20-second gap to the leader just with him in third place, constantly swapping positions lap after lap. And then on the very last corner, the very last lap, he got the win. He picked the guy. So I sat there and think, my God, this is amazing. It's like watching all these ants build a ladder to get a leaf. It's just perfect to get everybody working together to get back the leader. So Skip Barber is awesome. It's one of the most popular series.
I'll need to try that because I know it's in the series this week. I think I've actually bought it. I bought that and I bought something else. I'm not sure if I bought the Ferrari. I may have bought a Ferrari. I think I bought some other car too. But I wanted to get involved in that because it looked a lot of fun and to try some different types of racing. Yeah, and although it can be crazy, I think at first if you're not used to it in terms of people crashing and spinning off, but I think if you can at all control the car, then I think you've got a chance of getting around the track and doing a reasonable time.
Again, it goes back to what I said at the very beginning. Your car has a personality. If you learn the personality of your car, you'll get much better results than if you just hop from one person to another. So it's make friends with your car.
Yeah. I need to figure out as well, because it shows you how basic I am on iRacing. I don't even know how to friend people. And Keith Bologna on this has just said, I need to friend him on iRacing. I don't even know how to do that. So I'll need to figure out how you find people on it.
You need to do a driver search, then you click on their profile, then you click on submit friend request. You see, this is one of the things that has always bugged me about iRacing. They don't exactly make it easy for you. The learning curve driving is like that, but the learning curve using it is like that. They don't go out of their way to show you how to do it. There is help out there. The forums, the iRacing forums are really good for help. There's an iRacing YouTube channel. You've got other iRacing YouTube channels from guys like Dave Sampson, Dan Suzuki, who are normally Twitch streamers, but they've done these how-to guides. But I say they don't exactly go out of their way of telling you how to do anything iRacing. It's really badly signposted. But once you get past the learning curve, little things like, why am I in the pits for so long?
And I thought, I tried to go out.
Changing my tyres. Why? Are my tyres changed?
And I got points taken away because I had a
accelerated too soon.
And I think it was at Oran Park or something. Yeah. And it had all these cones.
Yeah. And you crossed the line too early.
Yeah, I missed them, and instead of turning left, I thought the road went straight on, so I carried on. And
Alden Park is a nightmare for that. There's cones everywhere. There's about 50 layouts. It's a bit like it's a bit like a very small Australian Paul Ricard. There's 100 layouts, and all they do is put some cones out, and you've really got to again learn the track, know the track. So this all goes back to at the beginning. Take time. Don't just jump straight in. Take the time. Just know what you're getting into. How's my car? How's the track? Where do I go from here? But it's the steep learning curve is phenomenal.
I had to take the pit exit option just so I could see
so you just know where to go.
Because I had there was no sign or any arrow or anything. And
it's a housing estate now, that track.
Is it? Yeah, I heard it.
It's a defunct track. It's now a housing estate.
Yeah, it's quite funny. That, but no, I like that track and other ones. So I'm definitely going to get more involved and do it. I might need to get your assistance on some of the setup and things like that.
That's what I've said. I mean, I'm not the person who's been in iRacing the longest. It's just been 4 years, but in the 4 years, I've looked at everything. I've looked at every series and all these things. I did a tutorial on my channel about how to record a replay using like TV camera views that keep changing. Instead of being stuck to one camera view, how to get it to rotate through a few little things like that. And people want to know that. So, anybody on the Discords, either on John Vorter's Discord or on the Grey Wolf Racing Discord or on your Discord, of course, or on Snail Racing is another brilliant community. You've got husband and wife iRacing, Annie and Larry.
I interviewed Annie last year.
Scotland.
She's fantastic.
Their community is awesome for iRacing. So you just go on there and you just say, hello, I'm new here. How do I do this? For God's sake, how do I do this? And somebody will get back to you within a couple of minutes. It is really, really good. And that's actually one of the good things about sim racing these days that we didn't have back in Scale Electrics days was these massive communities who are all interconnected. They all know everybody else. And they'll point you in the right direction. If they haven't got the answer, they'll know exactly the person who has. And that's really what sort of makes, I think, but it could be same. It's probably the same in the Call of Duty community, the FIFA community. Who knows? I don't mix with those, but it's one of the nice things. You do get a sense of community in sim racing where people are genuinely only too happy to help, and I'm only too happy to help with any questions that anybody has. Just fire them at me, either on my channel or on your channel or anything like that. I'll help any way I can because I've been there. I've done the suffering, so you don't have to. That's very, very altruistic of me.
No, that's fantastic. Now, John Vorter has just joined us.
He's just joined. How did he get on? How'd you get on, John? Ask me the question, then John can tell us how he got on. I reckon he came top 10.
I'm sure. So we've got lots of people in the chat. We've got Woes, we've got Vorter, we've got Pit Stop Productions, we've got Rumar, we've got Keith Maloney, and many, many more as we go through. If I missed anyone, I do apologise.
Flattered.
But no, it's all fantastic. And now I was going to say now, Keith has asked a question. I'll find it here. He says, what is your favourite car in the iRacing series?
This is really sort of interesting because you can't really have one. Start saying who's your favourite supermodel. Because if a lot of cars are getting to know the car, get to know the track. Some cars, you've all got friends who you've got your friend, like your wife's friends and your friends, and sometimes they mix, and some friends don't like each other. And that's the same in sim racing. You could love this one car, but this one car doesn't love Spa, or this Spa isn't very friendly to your favorite GTE car. So you need to know, again, by learning and taking the time to practice properly, you need to find out what cars are better for which tracks. So the car I race the most, if I go for the two main classes of car I drive, the GT3s and the GTEs, the car that I race the most in GT3 is the Lamborghini Huracan. For a start, it looks like it's going fast, even when it isn't. So if I take a screenshot of me racing, you think I'm doing an extra 20 miles an hour than I probably actually am. And it is a really fast car. It's very low. It's very stable. It handles lateral tracks very well. Things like Brands Hatch, Road Atlanta, Mid-Ohio, Sports Car Course, Motorsport, Mossport in Canada, Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. these tracks where they have a lot of very quick left-right sections. Also, the one we're at this week in GT3's a twin. God, it's so hard to say. Twin ring Motegi has a couple of corners with very fast left rights, and you need a car which can handle that lateral movement. So the Lamborghini for me for GT3, for the GTEs, and John Vorter is going to do backflips for this, because for me my favorite GTE is the Porsche 911 RSR. It looks good. It's mid-engined, very well balanced, sounds amazing, looks amazing. I've seen them in real life. I was saying before we came on, I went to watch Le Mans 24 hours, and to see these cars close up and to hear them go past is something else. So the Porsche 911 RSR and the Lamborghini GT3 are probably the two that I use the most.
Oh, that's fantastic. No, that's really good. I mean, the thing is with sim racing, it's just vast, isn't it? All the different options you can.
So many combinations.
Bring about. Yeah. See, I love GT4. In GT Sport, GT4 is always quite fun. It does even some of the front drive cars. I quite like Race A. I mean, everyone hates Race A this week, but I quite like that it's Autopolis.
All the best racing in Assetto Corsa Competizione is in GT4, but nobody does it. You look at the servers online, there's like 50 servers, not a single driver. Even the people who own the servers don't race in their own servers. So GT4 is that, I mean, if you see like Mr. Git, always races GT4. It's superb. GT4 in iRacing, you've got the BMW, you've got the McLaren, you've got the Porsche Cayman. All of them superb cars. But
I'll have to try that.
The thing is, they take a lot of time to get used to because their brakes are softer and the tyres don't start warm. But they can take curbs much better than a GT3 can. So you can really abuse them more. The ride height is higher and that you can abuse them more. But on Assetto Corsa, the GT4 class is superb, but just nobody drives it.
I remember we did on Thea's stream last week. We were at Bathurst and we were using the GT3 Aston Martin, or GT4 Aston Martin.
Superb car, the Aston Martin.
Such a good race. Even in the wet, normal races I would never really touch. I'd have a go with that. And I did quite well. I was climbing up the field, got some top 10 finishes. In fact, one race, I think in the wet race, I finished 5th. One of the races I finished 5th. I mean, so I was quite chuffed.
We're talking about the wet again. Sim racers are their own worst enemy. We want an Aris from Assetto Corsa Competizione said this at the sim racing expo at the weekend, because they were having a panel, and they said, have you got any last comments? And he said, yes. You asked for night racing, you asked for rain. Use them. Nobody drives in the wet or the dark. You asked for it, nobody does it. iRacing has got rain coming to it. Everybody wants it. No one's going to do it. It's so predictable because people want an optimum track in a GT3 at Spa or Monza or whatever. That's what they want. So we're our own worst enemy. We ask for all these lovely things, and then when we get them, it's like you buy your cat an expensive toy, and you turn around after you've made it, and it's sitting in the box. We're the worst at that.
No, that's the thing. But it is fantastic. On top of that, a lot of people obviously own servers. I never really kind of knew how all that works, especially in things like I said, the course of competition. And what in terms of cost? Does it cost to a reasonable bit of money to run a server?
Different games operate in different ways. I'll make a few quick examples. So rFactor 2 and Assetto Corsa, they have a very big modding community. But the problem with that is that it's difficult to open a server so that everybody has the same car that you need or the same track that you need. They might have a different version. So those servers operate slightly differently. rFactor 2 is a nightmare for that because they sell their content. You think iRacing's content and the way you pay for it is difficult. rFactor 2 says, hold my beer. You can buy everything as a pack or you can buy it individually. Now, the problem is on their competition servers, if you want to drive a championship, you have to have all the cars and all the tracks for that championship. But you can only drive one car and you might not want to drive all the tracks. So I wanted to do this because they were doing testing and I wanted to have a go at this. So in order to drive an Aston Martin GTE at Silverstone, I had to buy a Corvette C8R and the Nordschleife, even though I couldn't drive the Corvette because I was registered with the Aston, and I didn't want to drive the Nordschleife because as I mentioned in my pre-stream communication, I never Nordschleife ever. It's a horrible track. So that's that. So those servers are difficult to set up because you need everybody to have the same thing. Assetto Corsa Competizione, straightforward. Locked in game, licensed, all the content is provided for you. On average, you're looking at about, for a 32 slot on the grid server per month, you're probably looking at around £6 or £7 per month. It's hosted for you. You have a website, you log on, you get a control panel, you set the parameters for what you want the session to be, then you click go and the server's live. You can do it in literally 5 minutes from ordering it. You can be up and running in 5 minutes. Assetto Corsa is really easy. iRacing is even easier. You pay as you go with that. So typically, if you want to buy 4 hours of server time, that will cost you $2. And you set up the server how you want. You make all the rules through a wizard. You click on what boxes you want, what cars do you want, what rules do you want, what conditions do you want, and then you can either schedule it or start it immediately, and iRacing handle it all for you. It shows up in the list and people join. The other interesting thing about iRacing private servers is that all the hosted sessions on a private server do not affect your ratings. So you can crash as much as you like, doesn't affect your iRating or your safety rating. You might get disqualified in the race, or you might get instant points in the race, but it doesn't reflect on your license. So you can have it's a lot more relaxing, basically, in a hosted iRacing server. But yeah, typically for someone like ACC, about £7 a month, take a few minutes to set it up. Again, I gave John Vorta a link to the iRacing, the Assetto Corsa Competizione server wiki, which tells you all you need to know. It gives you all the commands, all you need to know about setting up a server and running a race. It's very, very straightforward. It's not very daunting at all. It really is so simple.
I think we might have to do that. I can see it on the Assetto Corsa Competizione. I could see a Gt3 server coming.
Don't forget as well that with the release of Assetto Corsa Competizione on PlayStation 5 next February, you can do what you can do in Gran Turismo, and you can host private lobbies on your own machine. So you don't need to hire a server. You can just do it on your machine and get your friends to come and play on that. At the moment, you can't. You have to use the same system that the PC version does. But again, it's just as easy. It has fewer features, but it's just as easy. But from February next year, ACC on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X will have their own private servers for free, and you can just set up a race online straight away and ping it out, which is a good system because the PC doesn't do that. No, it's a bit more tricky with all of that, and I'd be interested to see if the version on PS5 has similar graphics, or if it's anywhere near the PC version, because the PC graphics are quite good on Assetto Corsa Competition. But I know that riles everybody up in the chat because I don't pronounce the competizione properly. But you've got to do the competizione. You've got to have the as well.
I've done a bit franglais in that, but I don't know what the word is for Italian version of that. But that's been my version of that. But no, it's fantastic. So, well, let me say, I'll quickly look through the questions because we've got lots of people in the chat. We've got 10 people watching, plus with lots of hundreds and hundreds of comments tonight, which is absolutely brilliant. So, if you've got more questions for Matt, then make sure you put them in here and put them in the capitals if you can. That's the thing. So, what's been your most memorable race, Matt, that you've ever done?
Well, again, I don't win a lot. I don't know why I do the YouTube thing. I really don't know. I've thought about it long and hard. I've been doing my YouTube channel for 3 and a bit years. I hit 400 subs today. Thank you, Oreo. He was number 400. My friend's got a dog called Oreo. Hopefully it wasn't the dog. But and then Darren Turner was 401. So thank you to Oreo and Darren Turner today. Very much appreciated. But I don't know why I do it. I mean, I'm not a massively fast racer. You look at the guys who stream on Twitch, and they always come top 2, top 3, and I just think, well, I'm racing. I'm an average guy. Sometimes I finish near the back. Most of the time I'll finish sort of in the middle, and occasionally it'll click. My practice will pay off, and I'll be at the front. So my most memorable race, I don't have a lot of victories. I had two wins in Skip Barber. My first win in Skip Barber was at Okayama. I had a race-long battle with another guy, and we ended up being a drag race to the line. I beat him by a couple of hundredths of a second. It was a phenomenal race, really good. My second win came 2 weeks later. Phenomenal. I waited so long, and then like buses, I had another one. And that was at Mid-Ohio sports car course. And I actually won that one legitimately, overtook some people, got into the lead, held it. And they were really memorable. Then my biggest one for me, though, has been I've got 2 GT3 wins. And again, some people will win a GT3 race every couple of hours because it just clicks for them. But for me, it's a lot harder than that. So my first GT3 race win, and there's a couple of reasons why it was memorable. The first, obviously, because I never thought I'd ever get one. I mean, I came third in a GT3 race at Laguna Seca about 3 weeks before it, and I was amazed. I thought this has got to be some mistake. You know, count the votes again. There's got to be some mistake. I don't come on the podium. And then a few weeks later, I was at Suzuka in an Audi R8, and I qualified third. And I thought, this is odd. And at the end of the first lap, second spun off in 1:30R because the race time was 6:30 a.m. So the track was cold, tyres were cold. He got 1:30R all wrong, nosedived into a tie barrier. And then for the next, it's about I think it's about a 21 lap race. And for 15 laps, I was right on the tail of P1. And then we caught the traffic, and I thought he's got a lower I rating, he's got a lower safety rating. I don't think he's that experienced at leading a race. I'm going to get in the pits and hope that he's had trouble getting through the traffic. So I did an early pit stop, came out within 2 laps. I was 15 seconds ahead, and it was a stroll. And at the end, again, it was weird because there was just no cars with me. It was I described it on my video at the time. I said, this is very odd. It's very Zen-like experience. It's almost like out of body. I'm driving, but there's nothing. There's no one. It's like I'm on another plane. There's no one there. So that was a memorable race because it was my first win. At the end of it, I thought, well, that was easy. Why don't I do that more often? But also, my uncle in America, I said I have American family. My uncle in America, he was really a big fan of my channel, and he was watching all my races, and he would always be taking the mick out of me. But unfortunately, he died with cancer just before Christmas. And I thought, that's just typical. I win a race and he can't see it. So unlucky. But and then I won when iRacing released their Porsche 911 GT3R, which was not the start of this season but the start of last season. So that had been April or something, March, April. My first race in that, I thought, right, okay, let's see what this new car's all about. Streaked away with a win. I thought, wow, that was all right. Again, that was easy. Why didn't I do that more often? So they're the most memorable ones. But my first GT3 win, Suzuka, just phenomenal. Or literally most of the video, I'm driving like this. I don't understand what's going on. I don't lead races. I don't win races. What is going on? And it's fantastic. It's the feeling you get when you win a race in iRacing. You think, wow. For the last 40 minutes or the last hour or whatever race I've done, the last 15 minutes, wow. You just emotionally, you just sit there, it just drains out of you. And that is why, it's the sim race game which makes me the most nervous. I don't get nervous before a set of Corsa Competizione or any of the others. iRacing, every race, I'm there. And it's like the end of Airplane. The sweat is pouring off me, and I just need somebody to lean in and say, "Good luck, we're all counting on you." But it's hard to win, I think, in iRacing for an average guy. And so when they do come, it's amazing. It really is no feeling like it, really.
Yeah,
and I'm just very grateful that we can experience this through technology, having good PCs and good steering wheels and good pedals and good monitors and good headsets and good programmers and a good community to help you out, that you can experience these highs that normally, also about iRacing, I've beaten racers like Kelvin van der Linde, the DTM leader. It was multi-class. I was in LMP1, he was in a GTE. We don't worry about that. It still counts. It was 4 position. But you turn up at a race. Oh, there's Fernando Alonso. Oh, there's Lando Norris. Motegi where we raced this week in the GT3s, the first time I raced at Motegi, I was on the back row of the grid, and next to me was Lando Norris, who went on to win. I didn't come anywhere near the front, but he just cut through the field in a 40-minute race. It was hilarious. What happened to him these days? I don't really hear about Lando Norris these days. He was so promising. But yeah, Kelvin Van Der Linde, Lando Norris, Tony Kanaan races a lot online. Absolute legend of real motorsports. He's just getting into sim racing. He's allied with Dave Sampson, who streams on Twitch, who's a British guy who now lives and works in North Carolina, I think it is, in the States. And they do a lot of work. And they're friends with Annie and Dave Cameron. Everybody knows each other. Everybody, it's lovely. Community is awesome.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Now, we've got a couple of very quick questions just to finish.
Go for it.
With Keith has said, my final question, do you own all the road iRacing content?
I'm not far off it. The trouble is, though, I'm terrible for this. It's like, oh, look at the shiny. So last week, they released the Porsche 992 GT3 Cup car. The Porsche Cup car, notoriously, especially the old one of the hardest cars to drive in iRacing. No traction, no ABS, rear-wheel drive. It's a real difficult car to drive. But once you get the hang of it, again, so rewarding. I got a podium in a race at Spa in the Porsche Cup cars. And again, I'm just walking around questioning, had I died and something happened? Because this is just so bizarre. But I've bought that Cup car, probably never going to race it, which will annoy John. But there you go. I've got a lot of cars. I think I've got something like 75 or 80 cars. And I tend to race about 5. Because this was all early day purchases. I bought everything at the start. I just want, I want to race that. Oh, do you know what? I've got all these GT3 cars, but I haven't got that one. I better get that one to complete the set. Never raced it. So I'm terrible like that. At the beginning with iRacing, you just need to look at the schedules and see which schedules you're interested in, share the same content, then go for those, and then slowly build up. And don't forget, once you get into D class and above, if you complete 8 different races in a 12-week season, iRacing will pay you money. If you complete 3 series, basically, so 3 different series, 8 races in each over different weeks, you'll get $10 every season, which is $40 a year. There's no other game which will pay you to play its game. And you can use those for cars, tracks, subscription, anything you want. So again, it helps bring the cost of it down. People say iRacing is expensive only at the beginning. Once you get past the first 12 months, it's as cheap as anything. I know people who say iRacing is so expensive, and then they go out and every year they buy the Ultimate Edition Formula One, the Ultimate Edition FIFA, Ultimate Edition Call of Duty. They're all 90 quid games. I don't spend anything like over 100 quid on iRacing a year, which works out at £2 a month. I own most of the stuff, but I don't drive most of the stuff now.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Well,
He's put a shift tonight.
It certainly has. Yeah. And we've got Erid here as well.
Yeah, go for it.
We've got, we were racing last night on Thea's stream, which was fantastic. So, he's just joined us in the last few, or something that's commented here in the last few minutes. So it's fantastic to see everybody. Now, next week, we've got Zavijic on the interview. He is from, I think, Slovenia. And one of the fastest guys, in fact, he just finished in the top 20 for both the manufacturers and the Nations Cup in GT Sport. And he streams as well. So he'll be there on the 30th. And then on the 7th, we've got Dave Cam.
Dave's awesome.
I'm really looking forward to seeing him.
He's so lovely. He makes me crack up. And his wife Julie as well. His partner Julie. She sort of, because he's got 2 rigs side by side, and she sort of drives in one, he drives in the other. So Annie and Larry don't have 2 rigs. I mean, they're an iRacing couple, but they share the same rig. But Julie and Dave are side by side. But Dave went to the Sim Racing Expo, drove all the way back.
Yeah, I saw
went on the Nordschleife.
I need to watch his video because I know he did one that had the whole thing on it. So he's coming in 2 weeks' time. And then
ask him about his dogs.
About his dogs.
He's got these Labradors, black Labradors. They're mental.
Yeah, because he was a policeman, wasn't he? He was a policeman.
Oh.
Yeah, I think you said that in one of the chat and chill sessions that I joined a few weeks ago. So I'm looking forward to having him. Then we've got the Canadian e-sporting lobby who are going to be. It's a chap called Jeremy from Canada, from Montreal, and very kindly got in touch through the internet. So if you're watching just now, or you're hearing this on the podcast, and you would like to come on the show, let us know. We'll get you a slot. But Jeremy has, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, because it had lost sorts of little French connections. But Jeremy...
You're so uncultured.
I know. My father would turn in his grave because I did my higher French a long time ago. But he found me on the internet. He's been listening to the podcast, and of which everything is in the description, so you can listen to our podcast as well there. We've got lots of people on our whole catalogue. And so he loves the shows and was recommended to come on as I'd love to be a guest. So he's coming on in about 3 or 4 weeks' time, around about the 14th, I think, of October. He'll be on the show. So yeah, it's fantastic. Things are really kind of building up, and we're nearly at 500 subs. We were at 478 before we started, so hopefully we haven't gone down. Hopefully we've gone up. So we're almost at 500. And there's a big special prize now. I did have the prize. Where did it go?
You get to win a brand new Dacia. Logan car.
I'm going to lose subs. I'm going to lose a serious number of subs for that. I think quite possibly. But no, here we are. It is for 500. When we hit 500, we've got this photo tile that's going out to the 500th one, which is of Senna and Hamilton. So you just see that on there. So that's going out, and you just stick it onto your wall. It's got little stickers on the mat there. And when we hit 1,000, one of the prizes here I've got is this photo tile here as well. So that's a nice classic one. If you're a bit of an F1 fan, that's definitely worth having.
If you've watched the Schumacher documentary, that was obviously taken while they were still talking to each other.
Yeah, I love going on YouTube and finding all the kind of the bits when that. There's that famous video when Senna talks to him for about 20 minutes when he took him out in France. I think it was at the French Grand Prix at Magny-Cours, and he's like arm around him and just saying, "You can't."
Explaining to him,
and it was
this is how we work. I win, you don't win yet.
Yeah,
remember that.
But you had to love him though, because he was just. I think Senna was just astonishing. With his
Senna, a very quick Senna thing that I read in one of his biographies. He got to, I can't remember who it was. I don't know if it was the early days at McLaren, but he went out onto the track and to do an installation lap, and he just came straight back in, and he said that tyre is bigger than that tyre. And they said, Ron Dennis was like, "Oh, you're talking rubbish. We've literally just unwrapped them." No, he goes, "That one is bigger than that one." He goes, "No, get out there and do it." So he goes out again, does another cup, comes back and goes, "No, I'll tell you that." I mean, this is very similar to the wall moved story at Adelaide, which is again phenomenal, because it did move. And he said, "No, that tyre is bigger than that one." They're like, "Okay, I'll go and have lunch and quick measure the tyres." And one tyre was 2 millimeters bigger than the other, and they were both out of the same mould and the same tyre warmers. But he just knew straight away that one was bigger than that one, and just phenomenal. I mean, that is a special type of racing driver to know that. And Schumacher was the same ilk. The technical side, again, going back to know your car, know the track, get to see what their foibles are, and then you'll do much better for it.
Yeah. No, it is something. I mean, I ended up buying a subscription to F1 TV because you can get all the old races, and the only race I ever saw live,
93 Donington.
Yeah, and I saw Senna win there, and I was watching it on the thing on the F1 TV, and it's just the noise, the atmosphere brings it all back. And just how incredible the racing was, you know. I know there were boring races. There were a lot of boring races in that year when Ferrari were trying to win, and they never could until Schumacher finally got there. But although I loved the Lacey when Lacey won in '95 in Canada, that was always I was a big John and Lacey fan. That V12 Ferrari was something else. Especially the '95 car looked amazing. One of my favorite cars. But it's been an absolute honour and joy to have you on the show.
Wow, look at the time! Wow.
I know, an hour and 23 minutes. My goodness me! But we could have gone on for many more hours. And
definitely.
This will go on as a podcast as well over the weekend. Probably Monday. I'll get that sent over to you.
They'll cut all the boring bits out, and it'll be 8.5 minutes.
Oh, it's great! But thanks to everybody who's been watching here tonight. And
thanks everybody.
We've got Zavitz on next week on the 30th, so make sure you tune in for that. And of course, we've got the link for Matt's YouTube channel in the description. And if you haven't already subbed to us, please give us a sub. That would be fantastic. I will be a little bit closer to 500 subs. That would be absolutely amazing. But the Car 7 Race Driver Show. Now, do you know our motto? Because we've got two parts to the motto. Would you like to finish the show doing our motto?
Drive fast and try not to crash. Into me, generally.
That's it. And if you do, you might just win the race at the first corner.
You might do. Best place to. As John Vorter found out tonight. First 5 corners.
Take care, everyone. Stay on the line, Matt. And we will see you.
See you later, folks.
Very soon. Bye just now.